Hey everybody, it's Sammy J from aperto and in this video, I'm going to be giving you the 5 layers to an elite athlete mindset. Every elite athlete has this structure, except they're not able to articulate it. It's all subconscious for them. I'm going to be breaking down these 5 layers into plain detail on what they are, how they fit into the grand scheme of your athletic endeavors, and what you can do action-wise so that you continue to improve indefinitely. If you don't have a solid foundation of these principles, it'll be very difficult to filter out the bad information and actually see the good information for what it is. Looking at my screen here, we have the 5 principles, 1 being mental awareness, 2 being mental cognition, 3 being training intent, 4 being training execution, and 5 being training process or processes, because there's multiple items in this layer. What's important to note is the hierarchy of this system. We have mental awareness at the bottom, below mental cognition, having these mental principles as a foundation for everything else that happens after. All these things have to happen as a full stack, starting with the foundation of mental awareness. So going into that, we have self-awareness, identity, and belief systems that make up mental awareness. Thinking about self-awareness, this is how aware you are of the patterns of your thought, not your thoughts themselves. People say, oh, I'm self-aware. I know what I do. I know what I think, but it's recognizing thoughts that you have that come up over and over again. So you're taking a third-person view of yourself and how you're interacting with the world versus being stuck within that first person. Like, I this, I that. Why can't I be good? Why can't I do this? Or even if you're doing good, I did this, I did that. You remove the I and you turn yourself into a character. So you become third person with yourself. So for example, the character Sam is able to run at 19 miles an hour, given these conditions of his body, prior training history, and certain factors from the day. Being able to step back into the third person gives you this objective look at yourself so that you're able to make changes without it feeling personal. It takes pressure off yourself by offloading it to this person that almost doesn't exist. Even with that being said, there's a duality to it. So you can assess yourself from that third person, but you also have to live with that first person view, which is your identity. And this is the self-image of who you are. This massively shapes everything you do, because if you define yourself, or your third person is defining your character as, I'm not a hard worker, I don't like doing my drills, I don't like stretching, you're going to carry that into everything you do. Anywhere in your athletic journey, if you say, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not a flexible person, I'm not coordinated, that's just not me. You have to stop this thinking. You made it up. It's not genetic, you're delusional, and you have to be the one to break it back down in your mind. And to do this, you just simply perform the actions that you need to do. It's scary to do this because of societal expectation. Oh, what are people going to think of me if I suddenly act out of character or within a different frame? You think about it in terms of your belief system. You just have to think that you are capable of doing anything. It doesn't matter what problem it is. You just think, oh, I'm sure I could be able to figure this out. It doesn't matter how big or how small, you're just gonna get it done. And even if the task seems insurmountable, the bigger the test and challenge that you set for yourself, the bigger potential you have to actually come through and deliver on something really awesome. Basically, having that mental awareness will enable you to just be that guy in any circumstance. So we move on to mental cognition, and we already started to get into that problem solving side of things, but before we get there, we'll touch on prioritization, planning, and scheduling. So this is being able to digest information on the fly and apply it to your base level ability of mental awareness. So it's like how fast you can take information and turn it into something useful. This is pattern recognition in a nutshell. You're taking all the variables of training intent, training execution, and your training processes, and you're filtering them with your mental cognition. I do want to add that you can have high levels of mental cognition, but low levels of mental awareness. And that's an issue in itself. But my best approach to problem solving is asking questions to get to a goal. The more questions you ask, the clearer it will be in your mind the steps it takes to get there. You start from a very high level. Say, I want to run a 10.4 100-meter sprint. You just ask questions. What's my current ability? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? And you break it down until you get to that granular detail of, oh, I need to activate my glutes more with this specific range of motion, and I'm choosing these exercise selections for this period of my training. Everything just filters down into a system. You're able to categorize everything in context with one another. And it's that raw ability that I'm talking about when it comes to mental cognition. So these two elements of mental awareness and mental cognition is what training sits on top of. Your ability to process and even bounce back from bad workouts, bad meets, that plays into mental awareness and mental cognition, but it's within the context of training. Swap training for anything else, business, school, and you've pretty much just hacked the game, because you're able to contextualize every activity you do as it relates to a specific goal. And not only will this help you achieve your goals, but it gives you a sense of purpose and drive to do more because you feel like you've figured it out. When you have a goal that's super specific and ambitious, and you know that every activity you're doing in your day-to-day, down to what you put in your body, how much sleep you're getting, it becomes enjoyable because you're making progress every waking moment that you're alive. And if this seems like a lot, you can teach yourself this stuff. It just takes practice. So as we get into the training aspect of things, we'll start with training intent. So this is long-term thinking with regards to progress and breaking things down to the first principles. I already started to touch on this, but if you break down everything you do within the training lifestyle to figure out what works best for you, you have to start with a goal. So if you're grinding to reach any level of competition, I would write out multi-year goals on the stats that you want your character to hit or have by these dates. Then you share this plan with your coach and you develop a plan. They'll help you figure out and make clear what to prioritize and how to schedule your life such that the habits you do within these training processes maximize your progress towards that goal. So with the long term figured out, you can break things down into the first principles. Usually what people say by first principles is thinking different from the crowd. That's what it looks like. You break down each movement or activity that you're doing into its constituent parts and you find the best way to reassemble it so that you can practice it most effectively. Say you have two athletes. They're going to interpret what the coach says in a slightly different way just based on who they are as a person and all the life circumstances that they have. And it's your job to figure out what you can tell yourself to make the most progress. For example, myself, I was learning the fast leg drill in a previous video. I was doing it on the floor, practicing the timing, and I told Coach E about it and he said that that's new. Nobody really does that. But in my mind, I said, okay, we can take gravity and timing out of the equation, but still practice the movement if we do it on the ground sideways. It's a bit idiosyncratic, but if it gives me results and I'm able to improve, what does it matter what anyone else thinks? So this is from like a movement perspective. Let's move into like a psychological perspective of training intent and breaking things down to first principles. If you figure out these mental cognition and mental awareness pieces and you can remove yourself from your brain and package yourself into a little framework, you can do that with other people as well. You ask them probing questions about their understanding of sport. And because you know all this prior information, their athletic history, you know how they like to do things, you can see if there's any overlap with their knowledge of even how the world works. And you can adopt that to your own mental framework. It comes down to understanding the things of what they say no to, what they ignore, the key things that they focus on. You just look at all these different people, even on your team. You look for the common denominators. What are these people doing with their technique that I'm not doing? So with that training intent figured out, we'll get into training execution. So this is thinking about movement patterns a little bit more specifically. So when I think about training, I'm always thinking about learning new movement patterns because every moment that I'm practicing, I'm doing it wrong. There's always more efficient ways or more powerful ways that I could be applying force into the ground or getting myself from point A to point B. And because you've organized and broken down all of these movement patterns into first principles, you can start to take your prior experiences and learn by analogy. So if you've practiced sports in the past or you decide to learn a new sport, weightlifting, swimming, different skills. Every new movement pattern you practice in those variety of scenarios, solo or with a team, it builds this subconscious ability to move your body through space. And all it takes now is intensity and variety to connect the dots between those experiences to reach higher heights in your performance. You see this a lot with business people or elite level athletes. He was a lacrosse player before he went to swimming, and now he's a scratch golfer. You have track athletes playing multiple sports. Devin Allen, hurdler, and also plays in the NFL. And it's also not uncommon for these people to be business guys. So they know what sales is. They know marketing. They know how to handle international relations. And once you have all these abilities and you're able to contextualize them with your mental cognition and mental awareness, you can lock in to any activity you do much faster. That topic is like flow. So how fast you can get into that flow state and just pick things up really quickly. So once you start building that idea of training execution, you have training process to top it off. And this is the actual step-by-step approach of things that happen and how they unfold. Think about it this way. If everything else is laid out, it's simple to do the training process because you know how it fits within every other context of your training, even down to the mindset. If you don't understand all the prior levels, you're doing yourself a disservice by not asking yourself questions that could get you to improve. And even if you ask your coach questions and they can't answer them, you know that their mental model of coaching is flawed. In addition to this, what if you just forget to do a step in the process, or you suddenly stop doing a habit? You won't know how omitting this thing could affect how you execute your training, or how it fits into your intent, or everything else. You won't even notice if you feel off or if you're regressing, and you'll continue to perform some type of action in this useless fashion and you're not even aware of it. It's never a cut and dry answer of follow these steps and get to become an elite athlete. You have to start thinking critically for yourself and what works best for you. I want to use this time now to go over an athlete named Michael Schumacher. He was a pioneering Formula One athlete for Ferrari in the 90s and the 2000s, taking them from this dinky garage shop to one of the biggest Formula One teams in the world. Athletes that fit into this mindset, you can define them as kind of full stack with multiple disciplines. So not only do they have this ability within their sport, but within other activities as well. Michael Schumacher was a mechanic before he became a Formula One superstar. This is an article where his former engineer shares stories about the level of detail. So this guy's like the Michael Jordan of Formula One. So here he says, one of the early things he asked for was a speedometer. At first we all laughed at this. Racers use the tachometer. So Michael explained that the tachometer was useful, but if he comes out of the corner in third gear, or if he comes out of the same corner in second gear, he wants to know whether it actually helps his acceleration. For example, do I reach a higher top speed, or is the extra acceleration in second gear lost when I change to third? And he goes on to describe, if I change the actual gear ratios, then all my references are gone if I've only got RPM. So because he's a mechanic and he can explain these concepts of racing in terms of the exact car technicalities that a mechanic would know, he can maximize the performance of his car. So instead of having just one new display, he ended up going for 3 new displays to tell him things like how fast he needs to brake, his real-time speed, and also how fast he needs to go on the straight. And the willingness to be idiosyncratic like this, breaking things down to the utmost detail, is what is going to help you succeed. So with this in mind, I'm trying to give sprinters the ability to break themselves down into these constituent parts by giving people tools to analyze themselves. So here's my website, apertotech.io, where you can upload any video to this website. You go to your dashboard, you choose your files and you upload them, and it spits out an annotated video of the date and all the stats you could want. With this information, you can break down your training process to the utmost detail so that everything else is able to be contextualized better. Let me know what you think about this video. Give it a like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend that you want to improve with.